I just bought one yesterday. I never had one.
Is yours working, Josie?
That's as long as we got recording and the rest of you guys.
You good, Katie?
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the City of Isani City Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, October 20th. If we could all rise for Pledge Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doing roll call, Councilman Collison and Councilman Burgley are absent. Councilman Collison did call ahead and notify us he would not be here. I'm assuming Councilman Burgley is going to be late as always. Any public comment at this time? Ma'am, you don't want to say anything? Okay. Let's move on to the committee meeting items. Going to E1, the police updates. Chief Myers. You just want to come up and use one of ours?
Let's talk about it.
All right. Aim your mic at him, Jimmy.
All right, our biggest update is our staffing. You've seen, when you read your resolutions on overhiring, again, I'd like to thank the council for the lateral hiring authority, giving us the ability to reach out and hire experienced officers. Talked about before as far as how that saves us a lot of money in the long run. We're getting a better officer. The last 3 hires have all been from other agencies. Good to have that. It shows that we have something to offer as an employer, and then we have something to offer the community with some high quality, high trained people. Because recruitment is the #1 issue that is facing all law enforcement nationwide, as well as Minnesota. So we hired 2 new ones that are in field training, and they will be on their own. I think it's the first week in November, somewhere in there, and then they'll be on solo patrol around the city. And then we have our full complement staffed as far as they're employed, which has been the first time in a long time. Fleet, we put the 2021 Dodge Durango into service in August. If you notice that, that's a new look for our fleet. That's what they'll all be transferring over to as we get the fleet. The black one with the new graphic package. Again, it's to go with everything else, the rebranding of the department, rebranding of the city. Then I just put in what we have for our fleet out there. We have 7 fleet vehicles. During the day, Monday through Friday, all 7 are being operated. Lieutenant's here, he'll take whatever the other night car that's not being used. So we have 7 cars being operated. One thing I didn't add in there was Lexipol. I know we put that again, beginning of the year, we are up and running on the Lexipol policy program. That happened sometime this summer, and that was actually implemented. One of the other big ones that we finally completed was the evidence audit. So now all the evidence that we have in our PD, we have in our records management system. Our records management system has since 2007. However, we never incorporated articles, items, property into that. It's incorporated. So they need to, for example, now we can go to our records management system and say how many guns we have, and we can actually say how many we have. So that's a piece that we need to have to pass the DCA audit. As well as the key fob access, which was done at the end of last year, and then our CCTV camera system was installed, and it's up and running as of today. So those 3 pieces, the key fob access meaning logging in and out, so we know who goes in, the camera, as well as the audit piece. Now we're actually up to go, and we are within standards as far as integrity of the evidence. One thing I added in the back was just a breakdown over the last few years. The first 6 months, I was trying to get the first 3 quarters, but with how the statistics work with the BCA and the FBI, it's hard to get them to the first half of the year. The only thing that was interest was the disorderly conducts. If you look at the bottom, we have 24 disorderly conducts in 2020. You guys can all assume why people be disorderly in their own residences with their family members during times they're locked inside.
The first time that the audit and items are recorded into our records management system, huh?
Yes. Like I said, we had the system in 2007, it was there, we just was never incorporated. It took one employee of very copious amounts of hours to actually go into every evidence drawer, pull out every item, run it through a record system to see if the case is active or closed, see if we can dispose of it, and we're retaining it and then putting it into the record system. Like I said, the only way to know what was in there is we'd have to go through, last year I think we're at 9,000 ICRs in our system. You'd have to go through every one and count. Let's just say how many guns we have in our evidence property room. We'd have to go through 9,000 for the last until 2007. It's not practical. Now, everything in our property room is recorded in our records management system. Should be just an integrity piece. So there's accountability. We know what's there. And that helps us purge it. Because the other thing is we can purge things after so long, depending on the cases, once they're just resolved by the courts. So we don't need to retain whole evidence, whole case files. We actually are bringing a lot of stuff to one of their disposal sites, like Alexandria has a disposal site where you can burn hazardous materials, like drugs and paraphernalia and stuff like that, so we dispose of it. So it's actually, it's where we should have been over there.
Sad that it took this long to get there, but kudos to you and your administration staff for getting the wheels moving. Any questions, comments, or concerns for the chief? Thanks, chief. Good job as always, sir. Move on to E2, the water and sewer rate studies. I would assume, Mr. Becker, you have this one.
Yes, so this is the fun stuff that we do once every 3 years now. Inside of item 2 here, there's the water rate study at the front. Halfway through, you see the start of the sewer rate study. This has been brought up by more than one council member, more than once, about a desire to see the rates go down. My stance has always been, I will give you an honest assessment of what the rates can be, and the council can go ahead and do whatever they would like to do, and I would get on board. As it turns out, really two options for the water rates and two options for the sewer rates. Both of those have rates going down. Water rates a little less than sewer, but sewer a fair amount. The process for rate study is pretty straightforward. It's not simple, but it is fairly straightforward.
Let's make note that Councilman Burgley has arrived. Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Becker.
No, that's all right. So the main thing is a somewhat complex, nuanced study. Very simple. Basically, I project future ratepayers, how many connection, service connections do we think we're gonna have? What do I think future usage is gonna be to arrive at what I think future revenues will be? Then I can adjust those numbers based on whatever rates I might put in. Again, you project those future expenses. Operating expenses are pretty easy to project, but now that we actually have a 20-year capital improvement plan, figure
What's comparables for WAC fees in other cities?
When I did that analysis in I did that analysis in 2017 for 2018, I think. That was how we set the WAC and SAC rates that we did. We didn't go down uniformly on those. I think one went down 28%, the other went down 36 maybe percent, something like that. And we set that basically just looking at neighboring communities, what are they charging? And some of them were exceptionally high, 15,000 bucks for SAC and WAC, and others were like, I can remember Hanover, I think it was really low, $1,500 for both.
Yeah, but I think Andover shares that. But I think, I normally see WAC and SAC fees at about $5,000 a pop. That's pretty much standard, what I see in most cities. I'd like to see our consumption rate drop and our WAC and SAC fees increase. Because when you do an install and hook up, you're paying for it at that point. And that's why I like to see that way. Now that we're using our water, that's where our complaint is. People don't see a WAC and SAC fee. That WAC and SAC fee is brought on when they build or they connect to it. They see that water bill. And personally, I'd like to see the water bill drop, the consumption rate drop and increase that WAC and SAC fee. Because to me, that makes more sense. Because that's where the cost is, realistically.
Yeah, so that's why I elected to leave for looking at the water rates or the sewer rates. That's why I like to keep the WAC and SAC charges going up and not just up at 3%, but up at 5%. Simply because it seems to me that even while we're better, again, it's one of those things that, when that gets paid, it's substantially getting rolled into a larger home loan.
Yep.
It doesn't make a substantive difference on the payment to the house, but boy, people really do notice those consumption charges.
Yep.
And so that's where option one on the water rates is to just drop those consumption charges to flat 10% right out of the chute. And then have them start to go back up at 3%, or take more modest approach, 5% cut, and then just keep them at zero.
Just keep them even. What do you think?
I'd like to see it drop and then, like you said, keep it at zero, but I don't have any problem with that WAC and SAC fee creeping up a little bit. I really don't. If we even bumped it up to 3,000 each, I mean, that's, it doesn't sound like a lot, but a couple $100 is a couple $100 across the board.
Yeah, so we have, so in 2018, we dropped the water access charge 33%, and the sewer access charge in 2018 went down 28.2, so I remember it was at least reasonably good on that.
So there was a drastic reduction of the SAC and WAC in the last rate study, so we could bring it back up and we still won't get to where it used to be.
No, but I mean, I don't want to whack and sack people out of the city either, but, I mean, let's be realistic. It's $3,000, if instead of being 2,800, we went to 3,000 on that and then increased that in our 3% or 5% increase on that every year, and we keep that consumption rate down, that's going to be huge. Because here's what's going to happen. If knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but if construction falls flat on its face, we're still going to be able to, when somebody does tie on a WAC and SAC, ties onto the sewer and water and get the WAC and SAC fee, we can get that back, but people aren't feeling that they're being gouged on their water cost.
Like they are currently.
Yeah, we could just better reflect that. The issue gets to be is that the, total revenue we might bring, in any given year, 1.4, 1.5 million. But, base and consumption fees, but then SAC WAC fees might only be 250. So there's that disproportionate effect that you really wanted to make up for, say a 10% cut on consumption. Then those SAC WAC fees really got to go up, because they got to work 5 times as hard, basically, to get caught up.
I mean, what if new homes being built goes way down, I mean, are you still gonna be okay then?
What's that?
If new home sale, you know, if new construction goes way down, are you still gonna be all right?
Yeah, that's the other part of this too, is, you know, I'd be hesitant to lean too hard on, whack fees, SAC fees, simply because they are so variant over time, you know, you can have 5 years that are great, and then 5 years that are good. You know, same with, consumption, from an economic standpoint, I would never wanna lean too heavily on consumption charges, simply because that shows people an incentive to stop using water, which I worked at a utility where that became the problem, and it was not good. On the flip side of that, you know, to the extent that you can tie, your capital improvement and debt service payments to your base charges, that is a good thing. You know, so that you know that even if everybody in town shuts off their water, you know you can still make those basic minimum infrastructure, repairs and maintenance. You can make those debt service payments regardless, even if everybody turns off their faucet, you know you're still gonna be able to make those minimum obligations.
So essentially, Mike, do you think that we could possibly have an option 3 to where we're going that 5% and then keep it at even, but the whack and sack, or the whack and sack charges could,
Yeah, if we wanna do that on, if you wanna do that on water, I mean, option 2 is already drop consumption 5%, keep it at 0, keep the base rate at 0, no increase over 3 years. And if we wanna tweak that, water access charge upwards, that's perfectly fine. I mean, we don't, you know, I'm saying that at 5% increases from where we are, we'd be just fine. So if we wanted to say we're gonna do a one-time 15% increase and then go to 3 or 5% thereafter, yeah, that would be fine.
I know every one of us have been pretty passionate about this, so, you know, I think residents are coming to each and every one of us saying that they feel they're being gouged in their water rate, so if anybody's got any suggestions, please speak now so Mike can work his magic. And
I mean, I've done build-outs before in Watford City, North Dakota. It was $15,000 for the sack and whack fees.
holy,
So,
yeah.
I mean, that was a build-out in a strip mall
Yep.
that I had to pay. So, I mean, this is not too bad.
Which was even there. It's already there, you just got nailed it because you're,
Yeah, yeah.
and sewer and water was already there, so.
So $3,000, I think, is,
Well, that brings up my question.
but
This study here, reading it over, I didn't see business reflecting it. Does business pays different here, right?
It depends on the consumption rate.
Is that what it depends on?
Yeah, there's more tiers for commercial. Yep, and it's, so residential, you're just gonna have one base fee, but commercial can have, multiple base fees based on consumption.
Okay.
Pay a little bit more on that.
You just take,
The vast majority of the water sewer, the vast majority of the revenue is coming from residential.
And the commercial rates will be based off of these.
Yeah.
So like their base fees, even though they may pay 2 or 3 base fees, is this what's being proposed.
see, like you don't use that much water, but the laundromat uses 10 times the water. And
Jimmy's
then,
Pizza would though.
and then you go to a car wash, which uses 100 times more water. So they're being based off of the consumption of probably 25,000 and up, you know.
Yeah, the big difference between commercial and residential rates is how many base fees you get.
Oh, okay.
If you're plowing through 1.2 million gallons, yep, you got a whole lot of base fees you gotta pay. Residents, it's just a base fee, that's it.
And if you go through that water use at home, Chief Myers will be visiting you because you probably have something growing in your basement that you shouldn't.
I'm growing it with Chief Myers, so.
Don't put that out there, jeez.
No, I just asked because I was wondering if this study reflected business as well as residential both.
Yeah, businesses and residential will be based off these same rates.
Okay,
And the big difference being the number of times you have a base fee, but, you know, for discussion, I spend most of my time talking about residential simply because that is so overwhelmingly the bulk of the revenue that, I think that's a good place to focus, at least for our purposes.
You have the consensus of what direction to go, Mr. Becker? Or do you need more from the council?
Yeah, so right now, I just wanna know water rates, we talked about doing a 5% and then keeping them flat. Okay, so we'll do that for water. Now the question is, that's just water. Now sewer rates, we've got a little more.
So no third option.
If they want a third option, we can bring it back in November, but otherwise,
Do you want a third option, or are you guys good with the 5% and then keeping it even and then shifting gears for sewer here and seeing what we can do there?
I'm good.
I think number 2 is good.
Yeah, number 2 is fine. But I still, like I said, I still don't have a problem with that whack fee going up. It doesn't bother me none. Because that's, you know, you're not really paying for that directly.
But
Sometimes that you, Councilmember Kennedy, the only times you would see people or maybe hear something from the residents is if their well or their septic fails, they're gonna come in and they're gonna need to pay that, and, you know, that's when you hear it.
Well,
the,
but
the only other thing that I mentioned, and maybe you guys could tell me if I'm wrong or not, but they got meters out there that could tell you what is actually going down your sewer versus what's being used for irrigation. You know, maybe that would kind of balance or,
well, that'd be separating your, that would be separating your irrigation and your outside faucets.
And anyone can get, we call it a deduct meter.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they deduct the water coming in so that you don't get charged sewer rates, because sewer consumption is based off of water.
but that'd have to be on the out of the resident's pocket. The city's not
And
gonna,
right now, most residents just opt for that winter average,
okay.
just because that doesn't cost money.
And it does take that into account.
Well, you would think it does, but I'm gonna tell you, in the summertime, my water bill goes way up to the roof if I'm running water in my yard. It does. It's ridiculous.
And he's fancy. He's got irrigation. I don't think
I don't have
Councilman Gordon or
irrigation.
myself don't. I know that. Or
But I do know-
Burgley, but
I do know,
Recommend having people do the analysis, because to pay for, you know, a couple $100, maybe a plumbing charge, it might be in their best interest to get a deduct meter.
in this last Minnesota Cities, I seen an article in here where Burnsville offers credit for smart irrigation, but it's not a monitoring device that the city puts on. It's gone through your internet, so that if your internet weather says, you know, it's basically a smart home. So if your if you put that option in for your irrigation, the city actually pays you for the $200 to put the control in. So that, because the rain sensors, I could stand outside and it could be downpouring, raining cats and dogs, and an irrigation system is on. Those rain sensors don't always work.
I've seen it.
And these things operate off of what your weather does. So if it shows that it's raining, it won't come on. And I would really like to see that. It's done through a Wi-Fi connection, so it's not like it's something else you can put on there. That would be a huge option to do for the residents. Would be a start before putting a deduct meter in. And that would benefit the city, because we're not gonna be using that water.
Some options for sure. Mr. Becker, you need anything else, sir?
Yeah, so we know which way we want to go in water. So sewer, though, we have a little more leeway. Sewer, my 2 options I give are kind of the same mind. One being we're a little more aggressive in reducing rates in 2021 and then start going back up. The second option is go down a little less aggressively and then hold it flat. So option 1 for sewer rates is to go down 20% on the consumption rate in the first year, and then start going back to our 3% increases. In that scenario, the base rate would also now go down 10%, and then start ticking back up at 3%, and SAC fees, we just charge along at 5% increases. The second option there is where we go down a little bit less aggressively in that first year, so consumption would go down 15%, and then it would hold flat. Base rate would go down 5% instead of the 10, but then hold flat.
I think, in my opinion, option 2 on this one would be my favorable one as well.
Yeah, I like that flat rate. I mean, I think people are more apt to see, oh, wow, I got a 5% or, 10% decrease or 15% decrease, and then it's flat after that. I don't think,
You're not going to hear him constantly say, geez, my water bill keeps going up and down, up and down, up and down. Where it kind of, as you spoke last council meeting, you don't want to see your budget doing this. You want to see it, or
Yeah, I think water rates are a lot like tax rates and tax bills. And people don't mind paying for the things that they know they're getting. They don't mind paying for something when they know what they're getting. The thing they do not want is a surprise.
well,
No surprises.
they don't want no roller coaster ride.
Slow.
that,
Let's go down slow, but let's not. Let's not do this.
that 5%, 10% increase, where instead of keeping something flat, and knowingly that in a couple of years, we're gonna have to jump it up 15%, raising it 1% doesn't bother people. It's that 5 to above percentage that people panic about.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I talk to someone, a lot of times talking about if you go up or down double digits on anything.
It's a shell shock.
Probably already screwed up several years ago,
Yeah.
right? It didn't just happen. The issue would be here is that the last time we did a rate study, we didn't account for capital improvements at all. And so it ended up being a bit of a dart throw. There was no way that Northland was gonna be able to come in here and say, I definitively know these are the rates that we should be putting in place, because there was no accounting for capital improvements. Well, now we have a 20-year plan that actually looks up considerably farther. We really do know with pretty good certainty about where we need to be. So to my mind, even though I don't really like double-digit increases or decreases on anything, I'd like to have been planned, I would prefer to have been better prepared. I see this more as a, let's readjust. We've got a great fiscal plan in place. Let's get back to a proper normal of collecting the money we actually need and now start going forward with those small increases or those small decreases.
I think option 2 would be phenomenal on this too, Mike.
I agree.
So we'll queue those both up for December. We'll basically address those at the same time as the fee schedule, we're gonna post and do all that kind of stuff, and then they'll go into effect in the new year.
Awesome.
Awesome job, Mike, as always.
It's amazing what a finance director can do when he's allowed to do his job, huh?
His hands aren't tied, yeah.
Hands ain't tied, mouth ain't taped. It's awesome. Good job, Mike. Let's move on to E3, the liquor store I
Preliminary.
can't even pronounce this. Good
Preliminary.
Lord, I'll get my tongue untied. Preliminary plan. There we go. And we have John in the house.
All right, so as you can see in the backside of 3 is the floor plan kind of drew up. It's a rough layout, so dimensions are fairly accurate, but not 100% to scale. It's not the architect's draft. Some of the highlights we kind of went through: a 26-door rail cooler, obviously a much larger selection. Large beer cave, the guaranteed cold case beer on demand without having to spend a lot of staff time restocking, as I had mentioned a while back, that the beer delivery guys can literally put full pallets in there, and you don't have to restock it on the weekends like we do now. Larger area for backstock, not only allow for bigger buys and better deals, but increase our staff safety. Some of you have been through my facility, so you know what it's like in the back room now, so be quite a bit bigger than what we had. Designated area to stage the curbside orders is in the picture towards the front door near the front registers. Adequate warm shelf space to stock wider selection of products. Promo display giveaway tasting area allows flexibility to promote sales, display giveaway items, hold tasting events, things like that.
What's a rail cooler, John?
Rail cooler is what you have all your 6-packs and your 12-packs down.
Wouldn't that be what the beer cave's for?
No, the beer cave is for case beer.
Ah, okay.
So that's the difference between the two. A lot of stores have the rail cooler and they have case beer down it, well then you're spending all the labor loading the lines.
Yeah, okay.
Where if we got a cave, they're already on pallets, the customers come in and just grab it, so.
Makes John's life easier.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then proposed location of sales counter will still allow to greet customers as they enter store. And then we'd like the exterior to match existing city buildings. This will help us communicate to customers, staff, and community members that our profits go back to the community. Staff continue to work hard to find the least expensive yet appropriate interior and exterior options. Our goal is to be cost efficient as possible. So it's nice me being in the community realm. I know all and who to talk to. So a lot of things I know I can get a lot cheaper in different ways. And a lot of our stuff we can reuse too. Pallet racking we want to use on the sales floor and merchandise beer below and overstock above. Pallet racking is the same as like Home Depot. You've been to Home Depot, those are pallet racking. So you can actually put pallets up on those stanchions and our beer delivery guys can stack it with their own equipment. The design will allow us to not only expand our selection but our services as well. We're planning to catch a big chunk of traffic before this opens, and curbside pickup service. Minnesota state law does not allow a drive-up window, so we can call it curbside, but we can't call it a drive. Pictures of other liquor stores, both municipal and privately owned, are available for review by city council and mayor. These pictures are meant to give you an idea of what we're looking for interior design, and you can see Josie or myself to review the pictures. We have a packet up, so at least you can kind of see what we're looking at and what we want to do.
Do we know yet, John, what's north, south, east, and west on this thing, or have we not figured that out yet?
Oh, so if you look at the map, the door
Oh,
would
there's
be
a
the
map.
north. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's on, I don't even know what page this would be on here.
Oh, it's on page 3, just look over, it's on the back side of 3, is the floor plan.
On your
Oh, they're
iPad though.
electronic. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah,
You'll
it's-
find it, just keep looking.
Yeah, where it says canopy on the front, that's the entrance.
Okay, no, I do that. I just wanted to know what direction I was
Yeah.
facing.
7 pages down from the side, so, well, you don't have it like I do. You're way
I-
too far down.
So that'd be
I
the
didn't
north,
see
and
them.
then receiving's way in the back, in the south,
Are you even in the right
southeast
meeting?
Yeah,
There it
right
is,
here.
right there.
Oh, I saw that. No, I want to know what direction,
Well, this would
north,
be,
south, east, and west.
this would be.
So you're
west.
saying this would be north right here, right?
Right
This
now.
is, there it is.
It'll sit on.
It'll sit on the property just like that.
Right.
So that as you come through the curbside and you pull up this way, you're gonna basically go straight across, come out and go straight across into Coburn's parking lot or head down to the control intersection.
So that door faces north, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The curbside door will be straight north.
Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from the council?
I mean, how deep are we wanting to dig into this right now, I guess, is, you know, I mean, are we gonna have opportunity to make changes or suggestions in the future, or where are we at? You know, I mean, what are you looking for from us right now?
Well, I just want you to see kind of what envisioning is kind of the whole thing, that's why we're doing this.
Okay.
And then, like I say, we're obviously be as cost efficient as possible, but we want our liquor store to look like city buildings, that's the main focus, and that's what I wanted to make sure you understood. A lot of municipals do that.
The only problem I got with that, this is a very expensive building. That Burnish block, this block is not
We
cheap.
don't have to have the block the same, we can have the same front end look like we have at City Hall here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I hate this stone is very expensive and it should have never been done this way to start with. I mean, in my opinion, you know, but as for what you're saying right now, yes, definitely. This is just preliminary planning. Once it goes to an architect, engineer, then we have to start, you know, I personally on a building like this, I think if you find the right builder, we can use that builder as an engineer and he can get the engineering stamps. So we do not have to hire an engineer, and Jason, nothing against you on that. But I mean, if they want to do this job, they're gonna do it. They'll come up with that engineering approval. And, you know, that's just my knowledge of being in construction and doing these things. 9 times out of the 10, mechanical engineers, I oversee them anyway because they don't know what they're doing anyway. It doesn't work. So, and I'm not trying to be facetious when I say that, I just know that. I know one thing, I don't want to see a flat roof on this thing. I want to see a pitched roof. Minnesota is not a flat roof state. We're asking for nightmares and leaks and problems later.
If, Councilmember Gordon and the rest of the council, it would be good to know your ideas such as that here tonight, if that will expedite and save us money in the long run of having to go back and forth, time in developing plans, but also having people rework, drawings. So if you have any specific things that you'd like to see or not see, this would be a great time to share those with staff.
And John, I can definitely sometimes sit down with you and look at what you got going on here. If I've drawn one of these, I've drawn 1,000 of these plumbing plans for this kind of building. So I can definitely help with that. I mean, I can't, you know, when it comes down to bidding or whoever you hire, I can't be involved at that point, but I can sure help you lay this thing out wise for that.
I mean, that was my thought too, was that if it looks like the rest of the city buildings, we're gonna spend a lot of money on stone to do that, and that's not something I think we should spend the money on. I think getting the floor plan the way it needs to be and getting the space that we need and all of that, I think is gonna be good, but
I don't want it to look like a pole barn either.
no, I don't want it to look horrible either, but I
But-
mean, I think we can find.
But
a
we
balance there,
can,
can't
but
we?
like he said, he'd like the front to look that way. There's a lot of things we can do. We can spend a little money on the upfront, and we have to meet that 65 corridor standards of this building. If we don't do that, we're hypocrites. We have to do that. I don't care. It has to be done that way. And so I think we could splurge a little bit to make the front look right, and I think we can do things behind that's not in the public view. We can save it that way. I truly believe in that.
Okay.
Councilmember Lundy, actually, this parcel does not fall within the Highway 65 corridor. So it would not.
Sweet.
It is just outside. So where Coburn's and O'Reilly's was, this is just over and it doesn't have it.
That's
And
better,
then
yeah.
one thing too, I failed to mention, I did talk with the former manager of Cambridge, Bernie. His brother is the DM for Coburn's, so I'm gonna set up a meeting for myself, Mike and Josie to sit down with him and try and work together on either boulevard signs to combine with Coburn's and or some promotions with them to work in together with them, so.
That's good.
Fancy digital one.
Yeah. So just so you know that I'm in the works of doing that, I left him a voicemail, but I did reach out to Bernie today, he says his brother, he happened to meet with me, so, which is good, so.
John, does that include a sign on Colburn's or with?
Well, that would have been another option, I don't know, we'd have to talk with him and see how that would work, if it's something like
Yeah.
that, or if we're gonna do a monument sign on our own, we don't know the particulars of that yet.
Because my understanding, one of the reasons we're going out there is to get up north traffic. If you don't get a sign out on the highway, I say, I'm almost saying stay where we are, but I know everybody thinks that it's a slam dunk to get with Colburn's and Rossi or whatever, and I think a sign at 65 probably is a slam dunk. But I'm only 95% sure, so before I would feel comfortable moving forward, I want to know where that sign's going and how we're going to get traffic off the highway from,
Correct.
Yeah,
And we did,
from a
we did
sign.
discuss doing a billboard sign that we could do, online ordering and curbside, so people could do it on their way or before they come, that's the goal of this thing. Obviously, we want to catch that traffic.
Right.
So, I agree with you, I do.
yeah, thank you.
And Steve, maybe you would know more about this, but do we need 2 bathrooms? I mean, do we have that much use of the bathrooms at the liquor store? I mean, could we get by with just one?
That would be a Jason answer, I don't know if it's ADA compliant.
That's what I thought, it was ADA compliant, you had to have it too.
Yeah.
It all depends on the occupancy of the building is what determines the bathrooms. So, and
Square
by putting
footage
them
too,
in,
right, Steve?
you could have a huge building and have 4 people working in it. You don't need that many bathrooms. So it's mainly geared by your occupancy.
Okay.
So if this building sets the occupancy at 250 people, you have to have bathrooms to accommodate 250 people.
Are those bathrooms for public use too, John?
That's the plan, yes.
Then you're gonna need 2 bathrooms. I would guess that the occupancy is gonna be pretty high, plus if you're letting the public use them. I'd like to get away with 1, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
But I think 2 is gonna be sufficient.
Actually, bathrooms,
And they're not.
They're not that
fairly
expensive.
I was just gonna say, I didn't think they were fairly
you
expensive.
don't have to put in Taj Mahal bathroom. You don't put granite in it. You can just go with a wall hung sink and a
Cut a hole
toilet.
in the ground, call her.
But I would suggest if it's gonna be a public use bathroom, I would, before you do anything on the walls, before it's sheet rocked, I'd plywood it so they can't kick the walls in. Cause you're gonna have that happen. I don't care what you do. It happens.
Any other concerns from the council?
So do we have a point of sale that I would imagine we can move over then, right? Because we're gonna have an extra station. Right now you have just 2 stations, right? So you're,
Correct, I have 2, so what I did, and Jason and I were just talking about that, we want the ability to hit to 4 if we need to, without spending extra money piping in underground. I want to go over, go down the hole, we're ready to go, so we want to put in 4.
Okay,
The plan is just 2 right now.
okay.
So we would move everything computer-wise and screens over.
So all you'd have to do, even if you went to 4 stations, you just did have to buy another couple of actual stations, so not a whole new system, okay,
But that's just a preliminary, we want to make room for that
okay,
future.
all right. And then are you gonna have an actual dock on that receiving area spot, or is it gonna
Yes,
be?
so if you look on the south side corner of the building, that's the dock. It'll
Okay.
be enough that a truck can drive down.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a lot easier than what you got currently, huh?
Definitely, yes. Yep.
So then you'll have the parking to back in there then too, right, or the lot?
We'll have a parking lot in front and the north side, the north side.
Okay.
We were kind of discussing the almost 50, just in the front west side, northwest side.
Then the last thing I was curious on was just flooring. I mean, I don't know if we're really at that point of looking at that, but I mean,
So Jimmy, I do have pictures that you
Okay.
can look at, so I'm leaning more towards polished concrete.
Yeah, that's
I have
exactly what I was
pictures
gonna say.
from stores that had tinted concrete.
yeah.
Pergola flooring. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
so, but I have seen pictures of polished concrete at the Brooklyn Center store, and he loves it. So
Yeah.
it's just no maintenance.
Okay,
Polished concrete looks good.
yeah, that's what I.
How about
thought.
something like an epoxy with a
Cheapest
grip in
way
it
to go
though?
with them.
There you go.
I've seen stained concrete, but that just, it gets, it doesn't last very long.
Velcro
Yeah, yeah.
See, I like the epoxy with the grit in it, a little extra sand grit.
It's just, got a gloss to it, sort of, but I mean, it looks like,
If they do it right, it shouldn't.
But that's the
but
problem.
it looks like
Concrete with a gloss.
But I run into.
As long as they acid etch the concrete before they do it.
I think it's more of an expense than polished concrete.
But polished concrete gets slick. And it takes one person to take a spill in there, and then all of a sudden that epoxy floor became very,
We're still doing rugs, so that won't change. I don't know, so some things to think about.
Some safety factors to definitely look into. I know polished concrete looks great. I think it looks great, and it's not very expensive, but Councilman Lundin's got a point.
that they just did the epoxy floor at Station 2. We'll have to see, they did that, what, about a month ago, a couple
Yeah.
months ago, wasn't it,
It actually
Jimmy?
looks
like
good.
6 months ago, I think. It's been a
Was
while.
it 6 months
Was
ago?
it that long ago?
And then we should take a look at how that's wearing. And then they also did their logo, when they had it done, they did the fire district's logo, or the fire department logo, in the middle of the floor. And that way you could do the city logo, Isani Municipal Liquor Store with our city logo as you walk into it even. I mean, there's lots of options. I think right now at this point, I think we're kind of getting ahead of the game, but like Ms. Wood says, some ideas. I mean, I think there's ways that we can do some of this that's cost efficient.
We can make it look fancy, but not with a huge price tag, most definitely.
And I have some pictures of, actually Brooklyn Center that the vendors paid for big banners on the wall. It
And,
actually looks neat other than just a bunch of neons hanging all over.
and you're talking about other liquor stores. I found Marshall, Minnesota. Their liquor store looks like a library/city hall. Why they did that, I don't know, but it's crazy. It's crazy. God bless them. I hope they do well.
That's an engineer.
Any other comments, suggestions, concerns to John? All right, let's move on to E4, the 207 Richard Avenue update.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to update the council, let them know where we are at with that. We haven't talked about that recently. I did get an email from Tony Buttacoli, who is the Sandy County Public Health Director, last week on October 14th. And they did send a letter to the lien holder of the property, since there is no next of kin or co-owner listed. And they did state that either the county or the city may move forward with an abatement on that, just giving them proper notice. It has been recorded with the property as well. So we have the two jurisdictions, we have the city of Isani County, who both can do an abatement on this. However, the Isani County has statutory authority, and they have not delegated that to the city of Isani. Tony did state that he had reached out to the county attorney to see if they would be moving forward. It was his recommendation that they move forward with abatement on that. Obviously, nobody has money budgeted for something such as this, so that does take time. It has to go through the proper process, which also takes time. If council has a direction for me to go that's different than waiting to see what the county does, please let me know that, and I will move forward with that direction.
Ultimately, it's gonna come down, when it gets abated, it's gonna go through the county tax system anyway. But I think maybe we could,
Because who wants to put that money out?
I think we should maybe lean a little bit on the county and say, hey, we need to do something with this sooner than later. I mean,
It does sound like Tony is making that move and pressing it to the county attorney, to get the process started.
I mean, everything's been shut off to that address, right? There's nothing, no water, no electric, no gas, no nothing to that address.
Correct, it's sitting vacant, empty, everything shut off.
I think we should lean on the county too.
Personal property is still within, everything's still locked up.
Well, it's contaminated,
Correct.
so we couldn't even if it was abated, we couldn't let our fire district potentially go in there and do a practice burn because it's
I don't think you'd want
contaminated.
them, it's too close to other houses there.
Yeah. I was just using that as a,
Everything
we
does
couldn't
need
let
to be
no,
cleaned before it can be removed. There's kind of strict processes by the Department of Health outlined.
well,
So
hopefully,
it's done.
hopefully the county abates it and we just tear it down. That's my hopes. But let's lean on the county and see what they move. But if we could push them, I'd like to see that.
Sounds good, I will update you as I know more.
Move on to E5, the draft ordinance, chapter 216.
Okay, so staff has been working to get some of our policies by resolution into our city code. When it is done so properly, it is then enforceable compared to if it is not done properly, which would have it by resolution, there are loopholes. And it's much more difficult to have enforcement. So what you see before you is chapter 216, which we have of nuisance. And we did just that, as I mentioned. We added in the policies that by resolution, which included grass over 8 inches. We didn't change anything new on that. Also, the inclusion of snow and sidewalk clearing. That was already in policy by resolution. But things that we did add were clear definitions of noxious weeds, grass, and other rank vegetation. The inclusion of objects causing obstruction, such as wire and limbs that are hazardous, building conditions, and also detailed language for the notice and abatement process and procedures. These are things, like I said, I mentioned by resolution, we talked about them in the past when we're talking about code enforcement over at the police department. Much difficult to do their job well because they can't, it's not outlined in city code, now it will be. So in the draft before you, I know I have these things underlined so you can see the detail. Much of the things in section 216-4 that were added are coming from the League of Minnesota Cities model policy, just things that we've not had in here because we did a thorough review of this and found that there were some things that probably should be added. If you have any questions or concerns about these things, let me know. Otherwise, we'll post this for the required 10 days and bring it forward to council for consideration.
Council understands why we're doing this, right? Right now, as it sits, our code enforcement has no leg to stand on because they've just been spoke to in a resolution, and that was it. Now we're actually putting this in an ordinance and giving them the legs to stand on. So they can enforce this and they can say, hey, you have to do this or I can write you a citation type thing. I didn't know there was something called Johnson grass. Wow, I got my grass named after me even. It's a weed, yeah. Thanks, Councilman Burgley.
You got corn cockle.
Yeah, there's some strange ones in there, that's for sure. That one just caught my eye. It's obviously.
Mile a minute
Yeah,
weed?
that's what I was gonna say, a mile a minute or like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that this has
Hairy
gotta be
white
done.
top.
I wish we could do something with some properties that are just outside the city limits.
Yeah, I hear that.
If you came in and looked in my garage, you'd see what I'm talking about.
So, in order for us to just, you know, let Ms. Wood do her thing here, we're essentially gonna give code enforcement their legs and their 2 feet to stand on so they can start enforcing this stuff. So I'm 100% behind this.
I also.
Anyone against this? Are we good? Councilman Gordon, I see that face.
You know how much I like to let people do whatever they want, but, yeah, I know, I think it looks fine. There was one spot I noticed where it said, that our officers won't go onto the property, but then another spot where it says we'll leave a sign on the door, which I'm sure the city attorney will look through and stuff too, but, and maybe that's in reference to something else, but no, I think it's good.
Alrighty then. Let's move on to E6, pedestrian overpass, underpass, possible funding source update. This thing again. This thing again, it just keeps coming back.
Yeah, so just like we talked on our last, time regarding funding, updating that last memo to reflect current costs and estimates to give you guys an idea where this sits. You know, in all reality, after talking with my funding experts, you know, while there are enough applications to apply for to try and get all the way down to more or less just a couple $100,000 or $150,000, like world's best case scenario of getting everything. The reality is our estimate for really the best case where we get 3 out of the 6 of these applications, the city would still be looking at about $490,000 to pay for the overpass. You know, there's a possibility it could be better, but there's certainly a possibility it could be worse. That we don't get the max out of the multiple ones. I guess the other piece of this then is just to find out, we need to do that feasibility report to figure out the new location, the new crossing path, how that's all gonna work. And then once we've done that, we'd be able to do these applications easier. But, just that upfront cost to find out where we sit, looks like it would be in the 64,000 range next year, even decide if the project's gonna, you know, move forward in any way.
I don't think that's a lot of money to just check it out, and we're not even guaranteed anything.
No, I think you know where I stand on it. I can't see us spending that kind of money.
I mean, it'd be nice to have, but.
It'd be great to have, but there's no way
but
I'm
no way
spending that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just spending 64,000, we haven't even turned a piece of paper over yet.
Yeah.
$64,000 on one hand of poker. Probably not.
Well, I mean, I guess the only other little piece there is, you know, half of that is to get the study done so we know if there's ever another thought. It doesn't have to be happening now. These federal funds, this 2.15 million, don't technically expire as long as we don't say we are not going to use them. And so, you know, not to say anything about how much to spend to look into it, but half of that would actually have evaluated the actual proposed route, and then, you know, the other half is the actual funding of whether it applies now versus, you know, now we know where we want it to go. We still don't have to give up this 2.15 million, and then we can reassess down the road, or, you know.
Used a double negative when you said we are not, saying we're not going to use it, or something like that.
I'm just trying to confuse you. No,
You did a good job, congratulations.
Well, that's not saying much, but
Oh,
okay.
whatever.
so,
There's a snowbank with your name on it.
no, I mean, unless you have other questions, I don't think we're going into the different, funding sources and all that, unless you want to, and
I already see the gears slipping down there, and I can see what Councilman Gordon is saying, and I'm thinking the same thing. That's an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, you spend 64,000 hoping to get 2.4 in 10 years from now, even if we do it. No matter what, we're still sticking out $64,000.
Even if, I mean, what Jason's saying, it could be $32,000 now and $32,000 later. It's still 64,000, so it's.
yeah, and that's more or less the first step.
I don't even know if I want to spend 32,000 on this.
Yeah, no, that's.
No, absolutely. I mean, is there a grant to get the 32,000? I mean, if we could spend 1,000 to get someone write a grant,
And that I totally agree with, but it just, that ain't there.
Can we just reach out to our congressman?
That's kinda how we got the first 2.15, so technically, but, you know, yeah, the other part of it is that bonding bill, you know, it did just pass, so all these options are at least on the table, the way we have them laid out. Until last week, that was actually more up in the air. But, yeah, no, I mean, it's more or less the same kind of window that we were talking last time, and, you know, it, just kinda comes down.
We say we're not doing, we're losing that money. I see what he's saying.
But we'd have to do the study.
but, yeah, which is $32,000. I mean, if we could get a grant to get the 32,000, I'd put in a grand to get the 32,000 if someone could write a grant for that. But to sit here and say, I'm gonna spend $32,000,
It's kind of crazy.
it's a lot of money. To say we're gonna build it within 10 years, I don't know.
And then again, then we gotta deal with the state to get it across the road. It took us 2 years to get a sidewalk across the railroad tracks on South Passage. And that sat there for, Jason, you remember that, it sat for 2 years, the sidewalk just stopped at the state railroad tracks, and it took us 2 years just to get the railroad track to see we could cross it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole other side of this is, it still is an unlimited amount of time as long as the idea of using it is ever gonna happen, where you don't technically have to officially.
Well, we're not saying it'll never happen. We're just
There we
saying
go.
not now.
I'm just not gonna spend 32,000 right now. Do we have to say we're gonna spend 32,000 now to tie the money up?
No, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Oh, well, we're not saying it's never going to
It's
happen.
never gonna happen, we're not saying that, no. No, we're just not gonna spend 32,000 right
Not
now,
now.
even, right now.
Is there a way of getting that $32,000 out of them? Just say, here's your 32,000?
Really, not really, you know.
So it's basically, that's the money we would have to come up with.
Yeah, that
Okay.
front end, you know, and
John, you need to do better at the liquor store next year. Hey, we're good, we're doing something for you, buddy.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to E7, School for All Seasons Request. Oh, was this mine, Ms. Webb? So I received a letter, as you'll see on page 41 of 54 here, from a Miss Grace, a teacher at the School for All Seasons. And following her letter was, and I don't know how many Miss Wood put in here, but there was quite a bit of students that wrote me as well. Oh, every one of them are in here. Okay. So Miss Grace, she teaches third grade at the School for All Seasons. And her students, there's one in here from Avery, and as you see those letters, they pretty much are all asking for a community center for children. As you can read Noah's letter, as you go down Abby's letter, many different students in here that wrote not only myself, but it does say, "Dear Mr. Johnson and Council." So I thought you gentlemen should look at these as well.
Is this community center over here not, what do we call this over here? Isn't we call that community center over there?
It's a community center, but it's not. They're talking, the reason we put this in there is you guys have time to read these letters. And then maybe we can revisit this.
Most cities can, with their community centers, they have a pool and they have a play area, or basketball courts. Some will have, like anytime fitness areas.
I think this student's, his name is Ryan. He's a third grader at Miss Grace's class. He states that he'd like a community center. As a third grader, there's not much to do around here. Please talk to the city council and see if this could happen. I look forward to hearing back from you. They want to do a Zoom meeting with me, and I plan on letting them know that we spoke about this and what we came up with. I think they're gearing more towards a YMCA type facility, and I just don't see that happening in our city, but anything's possible. A lot of that money, I understand, comes from grants. I don't know if Mike or Jason could, or even, I think, aren't you working at a YMCA?
Yeah, it don't come from grants. It comes from the city that they're in.
Oofda.
And the average cost of a YMCA to come in a city is probably $5 million to start. And then as a resident, even though you're paying that out in taxes, you still pay to use memberships. And they have to use every dollar that they have at the YMCA in their budget. So come October, if they say have $1.3 million left in the budget, they're remodeling the building. Or they're buying this and adding this. They have to zero balance out at the end of their fiscal year so that they can get the extra $3 million or $4 million every year put back into their budget to operating costs.
Do the residents get a break, oh, they don't get a break?
Nope.
So if I go down to the Andover YMCA, we all pay the same?
Yep.
whether it's- I'm from a Sandy or
Yep.
Andover, huh?
And nothing against the YMCA. I'm working on buildings for them. I'm doing a lot of work for them on different buildings. YMCA's aren't cheap. They're not for the city of Isani. I'm gonna be totally honest with you right now. They're just not.
Councilmember Berkeley, a lot of city, like larger community centers that are run by the city, they do that discount that you're talking about for residents versus outside people using it. But I haven't seen that at a YMCA, but city-ran community centers, like large ones like Shortview, have a large one.
Beautiful one too. It's absolutely beautiful. Shoreviews is great, but that's all ran by the city. Edina. No, which is it? Which one's Edina? Is that on this side of Minneapolis? Or is Egan's on the south side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, Edina's got another one just like it. It's absolutely beautiful. Plymouth, I think, has one, but I think they were tied in with Lifetime Fitness. I mean, you could do something like that with somebody other than the Y, but I've always said I'd like to see the city do a community center, do away with that building, add it on to the city, or be attached to the city hall somehow. That's how most of them are done. They're beautiful, but there's a dollar cost to it.
What happened to the guy over here doing the thrift store that was gonna try and put in a kid?
He's still going.
Is he still going?
Yep.
Yep.
He's slowly but surely working on the building.
Okay.
Doing what he's supposed to. I think when that comes in, it's gonna help the community a lot. I think a lot of these third graders will be, and maybe they're not aware that, and I forget what it's called. I don't know if you recall, Ms. Webb.
I don't either.
But it's pretty much like a jungle gym for kids. I mean, there's everything in that place from what I understand.
I think
Well, I think we're doing a lot in Bluebird Park for the size of our city. I mean, we're putting in the sledding hill. We're talking about the community
Amphitheater.
amphitheater and
And the
eventually a
splash pad and
splash
the-
pad and all
yeah.
that type of stuff, so.
I think in a long-range goal for the city of Isani, I think the city, bettering their community center would be a great idea in a long-range plan. I
I think Miss Grace's class will just have to be patient and see what we do come up with within our budget, and
By the time your kids.
think they'll
are-
be happy.
Yeah, tell them by the time your kids are third graders.
True.
Yeah, I'd love to do it for them, and it wouldn't just be for third graders, it'd be for everybody in the community, but
Right, right.
it's just not one of those things that, there's a big price tag on this.
We don't live in Egan or
No.
Minneapolis or
No.
Edina or.
But you think about the things we do, I mean, I think a sledding hill's gonna be big, I mean.
I think it is
you have
too.
to-
And
you
I
have to go
think
outside, you have
the
to-
thrift store deal that guy's doing in there, like I said, that's gonna be something for
I
him.
wish I could remember the name of that. It's like a huge jungle. It's like a. Yeah, it's like a trampoline.
I can't remember
slash
what he-
jungle gym slash. It's whatever he's doing with it. I know it sounds cool. I mean, I want to go in there and play. Is it? Huh. I don't know. Once it's built, I'll let you know what it's like. Cause I'll be. In
I mean,
the
has it even been announced that he's doing that?
You should wear helmets, you don't smash your head on it.
I'm going
Okay.
to ban a mouth guard. All right, let's move on to E8, the traffic control at the intersection of Rum River Drive Southwest and Birch Street. If you guys know, this is the street right after Martin's Landing. You take a right, so if you're headed west on Birch, There's a firefighter that lives right in the cul-de-sac there.
Yep.
Okay, so right at that intersection where the cul-de-sac would go to your right, Rum River goes to your left, and obviously Birch Street, it'd be what all those surrounding homes are asking for is, right now there's a yield sign there. They want a stop sign instead of that yield sign. Potentially, they're hoping everybody obeys it, they actually stop and then go, because there's so many kids in that area that if the kid comes riding a bike, they just yield to it, and they're gonna hit a kid, they're afraid. It kind of stemmed off somebody that used to sit in my seat. He pretty much runs through that stop sign at a pretty high rate of speed too, and that's where it stemmed, and then it just grew from there.
Same as, right in front of Wayne Trevor's house.
Yeah.
But that would have to be 2 stop signs there, correct?
There would have to be.
One on Run
One.
River Drive and one on Birch.
Well, right, if you wanted to make it a three-way.
Yeah, we could just make them stop at Rum River, stop at Birch. We could make the cul-de-sac even stop when they come out, if that's the case.
Miss Wood, this is you came from that whole area there, you know what I mean? Is your opinion on that?
Would you make it a two-way, or would you include that?
I mean, because the bulk of that cul-de-sac is right at that, I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to put a stop sign coming out of the cul-de-sac, but if you wanted to, I mean, you could put one right on Birch going in, or onto Rum River Drive. Most people are taking a left, obviously, and then you could put one from the other way, coming.
From Rum River Drive, taking a right
On Birch.
onto Birch.
I'd say we do it,
I say we do it that two-way.
two-way
One on-
stop.
You can ask Jason if he has.
Yeah, I guess once you do a traffic control change like that, not controlling the cul-de-sac, wouldn't actually be that great, because the other vehicles are gonna think it's a 3-way stop.
That's true.
The other vehicle's gonna go.
So maybe we just should do all three.
Well, I mean, from the traffic control standpoint, it wouldn't warrant stop signs on Rum River. Changing the yield to a stop sign, again, would be just following the standard. We just did that, maybe last year, and
So you're only making Birch stop.
just, to make it a formality of a stop sign instead of a yield.
You could put a sign that says cross traffic doesn't stop if you wanted to.
Right, but that would be more maintaining the current traffic layout. There's not really a change in condition for vehicles to get confused or do it wrong, but not controlling all the lights.
It's a bad idea.
We're gonna do that.
So I'll lean back to the other side, and Chief, what do you think? I mean, you see that intersection as a yield right now, and you're seeing people just kind of roll. I've sat there in that cul-de-sac and actually watched people come through, and at 30 miles an hour, they're taking that corner. I mean, you hear the little screech of their tires as they're around the people don't slow down.
They do it for some reason.
Well, it says police across your car. That makes sense.
I mean, there's more traffic in that neighborhood than there was, obviously, when that was developed, with all the stuff in the south end of that neighborhood. But,
So what would you, I mean, the community's just,
yeah, the community's looking for us, we did that over on the old neighborhood, the Cottonwood, and Third, one there, and one other place. For the same reason, the main reasons there were the pedestrian concerns.
and that's what they're concerned about here is pedestrian children.
To stay consistent, it's the same concerns we did over there.
We do over there, though, they have crosswalks over there where we did them. This one doesn't, I don't know if this one has a crosswalk.
No crosswalk. And I'm only speaking firsthand on this because I literally, Chief, you know me better than anybody. When I say I sat there and watched it for about 10 minutes. And people are turning that corner like they're in NASCAR. I'm like, holy buckets.
I'm assuming you're not in a marked police car, you're gonna see people slow down more for a stop sign than a yield sign. I'd say they're stopping for the stop sign.
Correct.
They're slow down more.
Correct.
Yep. I personally, I think we should put 3 stop signs in there.
I would agree with that.
Jason, you think you could just get away with one stop sign? Or you think you would just leave it the way it is?
So just by the warranting of when you actually would require a stop sign, this wouldn't require stop signs on the Rum River switching the yield to a stop, at least would kind of be consistent with the city's, engineering kind of standards and what we've done. But, guess you guys can.
So you're saying we could switch the yield sign to a stop sign and just put cross traffic does not stop, and that would be sufficient?
That would be the traffic control that would be recommended from the engineering standpoint.
So either we're gonna put 3 stop signs or 2 signs.
One, 3 or 1.
What would be, you're gonna have to put cross traffic does not stop, so that's 2. You're gonna have a stop sign and cross traffic does not stop versus 3 stop signs.
I think, personally, we're starting to get more and more kids in town. And more and
this town
more-
is full of kids.
And more and more and more and more, and younger people moving in, and,
I wish I had speed bumps on Main Street, to be honest with you.
but I think we can change that standard by putting in 3 signs. I mean, we can start moving forward with that, and as areas get worse and worse, hey, the chief of police, or the police department has a better leg to stand on. If there's a stop sign there,
And somebody runs it.
there's a ticket.
And you're starting to see people put their sign up, drive like your kids live
Yeah,
there.
I've seen a
And
ton
so-
of those in the
yeah,
city.
And so it's like, okay, people are concerned about how
Yeah,
people are driving.
and that's what this neighborhood is essentially, is they're concerned about the pedestrians and children.
So I'm hearing 3.
I say 3.
I'm with the 3. Councilman Lundin, you're
I'm
with
with
the
3.
Councilman Gordon, I mean, you're,
That's fine with me, I guess. I think Jason, you just, 1 sign would be enough, but that's fine.
I think overkilling on a matter like this isn't a bad thing, Councilman Gordon.
Well, there was a guy that came onto the council and he wanted a stop sign on 6th Avenue and that was not something that you guys were all for and, I think, and I was probably wrong at that time to say that there should be one there, cause I think you want the traffic flow moving, and I think you guys were right. And so I just think are you really gonna help a lot by putting a stop sign on the other 2 intersection spots, is if you just do the 1, they're at least gonna slow down from the side that they're coming fast on.
I see what you're saying, but you're controlling that intersection thoroughly if you're putting
Yeah.
3 versus 1.
No, you're right. No, I'm fine with it either way.
All right, move on to E9, the railroad quiet zone estimate. Oh, geez.
You got 5 years?
I have asked Jason to look into this, and he's going to speak on this, as you had asked about what it would take to do a quiet zone, so.
I did ask for this because I got a lot of residents on Main Street that are complaining, and I hear them at night too, and my wife is actually in the audience. She could vouch that I think we're used to them now, so it doesn't bother us that bad. But some of them residents that live right on top of these railroad tracks, if I lived at City Hall, I would go nuts. But that's just my opinion. And Josie, you spend 70% of your time here, as well as the rest of the staff, so. Yeah, okay, and everybody's like, they don't hear them, but they start coming by and everybody talks louder. Now I understand why Miss Wood's so loud. All right, go ahead, Jason.
Hey, it's nice to have a reason, right? Down here,
Right?
you say lover for a reason.
Depends on who she's talking to.
Right. She scares me sometimes.
So, yeah, this was the, preliminary, just conceptual. We have 4 street crossings right now, with the railroad.
That's the plow.
It's a tornado, everybody down.
I was gonna say they didn't hold their horn. Anyway, so each one has improvements that would be required, by the railroad to get them to stop blowing their horn. The big one that we can't know unless we do an actual site meeting with the railroad at each one, they can look at their controls and determine if this continuous warning system is already part of their system. They don't know until they're actually looking at it whether or not it's already capable of that function. And so if we were even interested in remotely moving forward, we'd have that meeting and that would really define that piece, which is $100,000 item per intersection. If it's already there, not really a cost. If it's not already there, we'd have to have them essentially swap out their whole control system. So these numbers are, if they all need the system, we just don't know that until if we want to move forward. Otherwise, the raised medians would be required pretty much on every one of them. Additional crossing arms would be replacing the pointing would probably be required. They basically make it get to the nth degree to make these perfect. And so, you know, worst case scenario, it's $1 million to mess with these four and work with the railroad to get it done. If the four controls are already in there, you know, it's still worse, you know, then it's a $600,000 deal to work with those guys to get to that point. Obviously, when that site meeting happens, maybe certain elements aren't gonna be required by them, but these are the general basic things that get required at each of these, and, you know, just for ballpark numbers, you guys know what that would be.
Are some of these more important than others? I mean, Heritage Boulevard, are there really residents that close to that? I'm trying to think. Yeah, businesses
But
on
it's
both-
still,
businesses
they
on
still
both
gotta
sides.
blow the horn when they
They still
get to
gotta blow the
town
Yeah, they have to blow before,
and after.
That's why it's
No,
repetitive.
I get
to,
that.
That's why it's repetitive to these residents, because essentially they're starting in South Passage, blowing their horn,
Yep.
and they blow it all the way to Isani Parkway.
Right.
And they're blowing their horn all the way through.
No, I get that. I'm just wondering if, so you're saying, so the answer is yes, it does make sense to do it to all of them, right?
Absolutely, you can't just
And,
do
but
two and
Heritage
not
Boulevard, then we have to deal with the county on doing that one.
four. Yeah,
And that could end up being more money yet.
yeah.
No, I've always been an advocate to want to have it done, but I did some researching in on my own, and it was very, very, very expensive to do. That's why I left it alone, because I knew it wasn't gonna be cheap.
Well, I was the lazy one and didn't do it on my own. I asked Jason to do it, so.
Yeah, I told you.
And here it comes, 1 million or $500,000, and that's a shell shocker. I think I'll talk to the residents. We'll leave that one alone for now.
I like the sound of the train. I don't,
It's comforting, is it not? I know
The
I'm
train
home.
doesn't- Yeah, train doesn't bother me.
Like, these guys are right next to the train tracks, and they don't even, Josie just gets louder, so.
Josie-
Do they rattle a little bit?
Problem anymore. Yeah, it does.
Well,
It's,
Every train goes by, it all bobbles.
and that ain't just from the horn, though.
but, you know, for you, that actually is a good thing, because, you know, the mixed liqueur drinks that you make, they're already mixed up for
They
you.
don't,
so-
and the ones that don't sell much aren't settled.
Yeah, never are. All right, let's move on to the E10, the Main Street speed discussion.
I believe that was mine.
Councilman Burgley with something up his sleeve here.
So, I don't think this was when you were on council. I think it was when, did you ever look that up? The guy that got hit? Anyway, I go to the church with the guy. He's died now. He got hit crossing the crosswalk over here by the post office. And, you know, that Main Street goes right by my office there, and they hit that street. I would say average drive is between 35 and 40. And some of them, I would say 75% of them slow down, but still people whip right through there. I'm just wondering if, after the railroad tracks, if we get them to slow down to 20, or is that possible? Or what do you think, Chief? Do you have a comment on that?
Well, we'll have Jason speak on it first. 'Cause
Okay.
It does take, to change the speed within town, it's kind of similar to the process that it would take to change it on Whiskey. So there would need to be a study performed, and Jason, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's just kind of what this is laying out here. So there is the new, you know, state rule out there that you can go to 25 mile an hour with a engineering, I guess, guideline or standard that is met to require it, and then you don't have to go through getting approved by the state commissioner, and to be able to modify it. Once you wanna go below 25, then you do have to go through all the formalities and get it submitted to go that way. So what we laid out here is just, kind of the in-depth evaluation of downtown, so it's not just checking the speed of the vehicles and then just determining what that would set the speed limit at based on that 8th percentile. This is other options that could be evaluated for traffic calming that would slow people down. You know, we already have some of these bump outs. You know, that's an
So, with this $8,000 that you're talking about, Jason, is that for the engineer to do it, or is that for the state study to do it, or what is that?
That'd be the engineering study that, yeah, Holman could do.
Can't we pull that on Whiskey Road too?
So, we can do a study, but it's a county road, and the county would have to bring their, I guess, recommendations or what they want to the state. And the speed study would be literally clocking all these cars, and the 85th percentile, like, the speed that 85% of the people are going, is the speed that the state then says, okay, well, this is what it's supposed to be posted at. And so, what happens a lot for cities is they go, everybody drives so fast, we wanna slow them down. Well, you do the study and find out they're all driving fast, now you have to post it at the higher speed, because now you're telling everybody, be aware everybody's driving faster. And so now we're posting it as such, because that's what everybody's driving. So you're not making the majority doing something illegal, essentially. It's,
What's that called, chief, in the police world? The honey hole? What's that what that's called?
and so the whiskey situation was a little different, where it's.
The honey hole.
Force it to slow down, contrary to what we assumed speed results would turn out to be. Whereas this downtown run, it might turn out that the majority are driving slower, you're just having a few driving too fast, where you actually can. That difference in speed is where you try and actually post it.
And I would actually say to put Main Street versus Whiskey, if we did that study on either or both, we're gonna end up raising the speed on Whiskey, but I bet we lower it on Main. Because everybody on Main goes slower than 30 miles an hour, for the most part.
I think, I would agree the majority, but I wouldn't agree that everybody does.
Well, that's what I said, for the most part.
Oh,
The 85 percentile would go under 30.
right, oh, yeah.
And then now you're controlling the 15% that are, already maybe speeding, but, even more significantly. And then, whether or not you wanna look into these other scenarios, or if you're just, in your opinion, let's get some crosswalk signs and at least just make it safer, not do all these studies, but you can just do that on its own. The other thing I wanted to point out though is if we did reduce that run of street from
Railroad tracks.
Third or fourth to the railroad tracks. There's so many cross streets that are the state standard 30, that we would have to post all of those different crossings that now you've entered a different speed limit.
I think it would almost do us better just to make those intersections safer than anything.
And so that's,
I pictured only going from the railroad tracks to Second, not all the way down to Fourth.
But either way, though, you're still, those cross streets, you're gonna have to let them know that they're now entering 20 mile an hour.
so, yeah, I can cut some of these down, but we're still, the length I was doing, I think, was from, what was it, Dolan to Third, turns out to be 11 signs, because you're telling people when they're entering and exiting that they're, now left is the speed limit, on each end, but then also entering and then the cross streets, and so it ends up being a lot of postings for, was there a different way to address the speeding, with some of these crosswalk signs, maybe,
You need 13 total, 11 speed limit signs and 2 end of speed limit signs. So,
that was that extra couple intersections beyond.
yeah. 13 signs you're putting on Main Street versus to where we could just put crosswalk
Yeah.
signs.
Yeah, I just think we need to slow
Make
people
it
down.
safer.
What do you think, Chief Myers? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I can send it out to Josie and then updates. I don't remember what last year, about this time, we did our speed survey, not study, because we're not scientific. All random areas throughout the city, residential stuff, with the data that we came out of there. And the data that, those of you guys were discussing, like 25 throughout the whole city, or 20 or something like that. And then, at least from what we came up with, was the 85th percentile is slow. You do have your outliers that are going fast. As far as your Main Street stuff, the issues you have on Main Street is the non-business hours. When cars are parked there, you probably see it, people are driving slower. You go down there now, your speed is just increased by 5 miles an hour on average, because you're not all that congestion and whatnot.
Then when you hit 10 o'clock at night, they think it's a raceway.
Well, that's me.
And, you know, the pedestrian crosswalk is a huge, the biggest issue we have with pedestrian crosswalk is heritage. That's the biggest safety concern. Hopefully that.
And he would have a good piece of equipment if we weren't so cheap and we could buy him one of those speed odometer things. The one he's got's broken and useless.
Do you think it's worth putting one of those arrow crosswalk signs down there, or?
I mean, that's an engineering, I don't know if there's any statistical analysis on what that does.
There is, and the results are, it doesn't do much.
Okay.
I mean, on the grand scheme of things, you know, it points it out, it draws some attention, but, you know, you got 15% that maybe don't pay that much attention, they're gonna be the same, maybe, you know.
So maybe we need to do a little more homework on this issue and see what we can come up with a safe ending that's not very costly.
Well, I guess that's why we're sitting here, on whether or not we wanna actually look into the speed side of things, or, you know.
Well, if,
I personally think that you have a speed, I've seen it, in Wyoming, city of Wyoming's got some, they got speed limit signs, and it's a radar,
Yeah.
picks up, and it flashes on you how fast I mean, that's a permanent sign. It's not a portable, it's a permanent sign.
I've seen them.
And I'll tell you something, those actually work more than an officer sitting there,
They're about 3,000 per sign.
you know?
Whatever. And I know we looked at it last year with, you can have mounts to mount on, so you can actually move it, take different mounts. And
Some of these bigger cities, like I know Minneapolis, Egan, like those police departments, they have that trailer thing you can hook up,
They're
and
getting away from the trailer, and most of it are,
what Councilman
Hook
Lundin
it
saying.
up to a sign, like a city sign, right?
It's just it's a box about this big,
Yeah, yep.
and it digitizes your speed limit. It says, you know, the speed limit is
Yeah.
20 miles an hour, your speed is,
Yeah,
and they, you know, either people think, hey, let's see how fast I can get this thing to go up, or, hey, I better slow down.
so there's a benefit to that, and also there's a benefit that Casey's talking about, trying to see what the numbers actually come in, because the data logger just as much as, you know, tells you your speed, but it logs that data for you as well.
That little thing does?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, that was actually my recommendation for the whiskey one, to see if we couldn't work out just getting one of those on whiskey, you know, not deal with changing the speeds, not, you know, just trying to get the county to agree to allow one of those was actually my recommendation back last when we were talking about whiskey, because that seemed like the fix for that one. This downtown run, you know, I guess, yeah, aside from collecting the data, you know, we might just find that maybe it'll get that 15% to see their speed flashing at them and get them knocked a little bit off, you know, 3,000.
I mean, if we're gonna buy one or two, why not 3 or 4 and put them in multiple areas and see how they work?
could I have one in my car?
I mean, honestly, you know, $8,000 to do a study that may or may not make similar recommendation.
That's the roll of the
You gotta
dice.
sign it, and you gotta pay for all those signs,
Yeah.
as opposed to paying less and putting up a couple of those, and then finding you wanna move them, because maybe they're not doing something.
Are you sure those things are 3,000 apiece?
Between 2,000 and 3,000, depending on what they're looking at, yes.
Maybe we should just buy one and just see how it does.
I think maybe that's what my recommendation would be, look, is Chief Myers, you look into what, you know, maybe if you can get one for, you know, if you buy 2, you get it at this price, or 4, bundle price, whatever, look into that,
Buy one
and come
for
back with
free,
a
right?
quote. I would be my suggestion on this. Because I
I would
do
agree with
think,
that.
I do think that, like Jason said, I think that, I thought the same thing, doing that on Whiskey Road, where you just come into town, would be huge. Because I go through, when I go over to Forest Lake area doing some stuff, I always go through that one in Wyoming. And I sometimes catch myself, and sometimes like, oh shit, you know, I gotta slow down.
It
But I
does
do
slow
know
you
that
down.
on that same sign, it'll have a smiley face if you're doing under 40, and it has a frown if you're going over 40, and it flashes at you. So I think it's, I mean, it's a mindset.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's a better option here, crosswalk.
I concur.
Yeah, I agree.
If you don't mind looking into that there, Chief? All right, anything else we have, Ms. Wood?
Make a motion to adjourn. Whoops.
Was there some public comment that maybe?
Yeah, Mayor, if I could, at the end of the meeting, have speak to you, make some comments.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Lundin. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Councilman Burgley. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Therefore, we stand adjourned.